Support for WUWM podcasts comes from University School of Milwaukee, fulfilling a values-based mission of developing learners, fostering leaders, and preparing citizens for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. More information at usm.org/mission.
An eviction can follow a person for years, even if the case is dismissed or if the renter was not at fault. Experts say it can have a long-lasting impact. A record of eviction can prevent someone from finding stable housing and deepen barriers to ever becoming a homeowner. WUWM Eric Vaughn Fellow Maria Peralta-Arellano explores a possible way to remove that blemish from someone's record as part of our series Seeking Solutions, Keys to Homeownership.
Since the beginning of the year, there have been over 3,000 eviction filings in Milwaukee County, according to the Eviction Lab. Every eviction starts with a written notice to the tenant. Allison Friedman, a law professor at the University of New Mexico Law School, explains.
This could be for non-payment of rent. It could be for a lease violation. It could be for some other substantial violation. Or in most states, there's something called no-cause eviction, which means that a landlord can provide a tenant with generally 30 days notice for any reason or no reason, as long as it's not a legally discriminatory reason, and evict the tenant just because they want, to have the property back.
In Milwaukee, eviction notices are typically 5, 14, and 28-day notices for unpaid, partial, late rent, or if the house has been deemed a nuisance. If the tenant remains, the landlord can then file for a court hearing. If the judge rules that a tenant can be evicted, a judgment is made and the eviction is official. Nick Toman is the senior housing attorney for the Legal Aid Society of Milwaukee. He says limited affordable housing options often place renters in a tough spot.
If a tenant has a landlord who's not fixing the property and the property's not up to code, the economics perspective is, the tenant should move. The tenant finds a better landlord who is going to fix the property. Nobody's going to rent from this bad landlord because they don't fix the property.
But Toman says that it often isn't that easy.
People don't feel that they have the ability to move simply because their landlord isn't fixing the conditions problems. So they often will remain in the property even though it's dilapidated. And then it may come to a head when they don't pay their rent because they've had to cover expenses caused by a lack of repairs, needing to cook food somewhere else because they don't have a working stove, or shower somewhere because they don't have running water, stay in a hotel because they don't have heat. And then once the tenant makes that decision to reasonably take care of themselves and stay safe by going to a hotel, if they fall behind on the rent, the landlord files an eviction, and there's not really a good process in place for determining what the right amount of rent is in those circumstances until it gets to eviction court.
Having a filing on record then makes it even more difficult to find stable housing.
A tenant with an eviction in their history, even if it is not really any fault of their own, is going to mean that their landlord's going to take a pass on them, probably, if there's other tenants out there who are applying who cleaner rental history.
One part of the problem is that most landlords use third-party tenant screening agencies. Friedman says the agencies only tell prospective landlords that someone has an eviction filing on their record.
They don't know if a case was dismissed. They have no idea if a tenant won the case. They don't know if the tenant stayed in the home. So it doesn't matter whether or not you actually win or lose your case. If you are ever taken to an eviction court as a tenant, you get branded with what we often call in academics as the Scarlet E.
In Wisconsin, once an eviction is filed, it can stay on a person's record for 2 years if the case is dismissed, or 10 years if the tenant is evicted. The Legal Aid Society of Milwaukee runs eviction sealing clinics. At these clinics, renters such as Pervisha Parker Fox come to see if they can get their names sealed or redacted from eviction cases.
So I was incarcerated, so I left with a balance. So I had to get all my stuff out, put it in the storage because I was incarcerated for 7 months. So my people had to move all my stuff out. And when I got out of being incarceration, I noticed that I had an eviction on my name for leaving with a balance, which I didn't have a choice.
Parker Fox has been trying to navigate life with an eviction on her record since 2024. She says she rents her current space under her best friend's name.
I've been doing a lot of applications, but I have not been getting callbacks, and only thing it can be is because of that. Because I'm not a first-time renter. I've been renting since I was 17. So only thing I can think of is infecting me is the eviction.
Gilbert Malice is the managing attorney for Eviction Free Milwaukee with the Legal Aid Society. He helps those visiting the eviction sealing clinic understand their options. He explains the process of sealing an eviction record can begin once a case is dismissed.
Realistically, in court, at that hearing that gets dismissed, the tenant or the defendant can ask the court to take it off the record at that time if they're in front of a judge. Or there's paperwork that my Legal Aid, Legal Action, and the Milwaukee Justice Center have all kind of paired together to help create for the prior judge and now this current judge. That's just 3 pages that goes through the process of what happened with their eviction. And why they want this off their record for the court to make a decision.
The eviction sealing clinic helps visitors with the paperwork to submit to the courts.
And it gives the landlord and the plaintiff up to 2 weeks for the court to review that and for any input that they have. Most landlords, once the case is resolved, dismissed, or there's money that's been paid to resolve it, they usually don't care, and they don't respond, or they might respond that they don't care to the court, but that's what that 2-week time takes. After that period, the judge makes her decision, and she balances whether or not this public record should remain open and viewable versus the private interest of the individual, the person asking that tenant. And that tenant is facing difficulties.
The eviction sealing clinic has a high rate of success. Between July and December 2025, more than 3/4 of their eligible cases were sealed.
And we're usually seeing that these cases are sealed within 24 to 48 hours by the judge, unless there's a reason for the judge not to. And in most cases, when there is a reason that the judge says, I'm not going to take this off of CCAP, that's where we're already kind of ahead of it, trying to prepare the tenant for those situations of, well, they have to go pay off a judgment, or they have to move out first, they have to agree or finish their agreement that they've signed in court. Once all that's done, then they can repetition the court to remove it.
Eviction sealing clinics, like the ones in Milwaukee, can only help a limited number of people. Law professor Allison Friedman has recommendations for more comprehensive solutions. She suggests other states follow legislation seen in California and Colorado known as automatic sealing, or point-of-filing sealing. Under these laws, eviction cases are filed and immediately sealed. They are unsealed if a landlord wins a judgment. Friedman says some landlords oppose sealing eviction records because they want to have clear insight into potential tenants' past rental history. Another solution Friedman suggests is limiting the amount of time an eviction stays on a person's record.
So there should be, in my view, some mechanism to seal a case after a certain number of years. So 3 years, 5 years. That gives landlords, a snapshot of, let's say, 36 rental periods to still see what, folks are doing in the rental space.
Because California's eviction records are not public, it is difficult to determine how many individuals have been affected by that state's automatic sealing laws. But in interviews, the nonprofit Urban Institute found that the law has resulted in positive changes for renters by shifting more power to them. It removes that scarlet E and gives renters a fresh start.
That was WUWM's Eric Von Fellow Maria Peralta-Arellano, reporting for our series Seeking Solutions, Keys to Homeownership. You can find more coverage like this at WUWM.com/housing.